We've just been joined by the man whose hour it is, Nigel Farage. Mr. Farage, thank you for joining us. And I suppose, first of all, congratulations on the UKIP result, which is pretty extraordinary, and has everybody talking about it. Some questions about it. What does this say about Sunday, for a start, in Europe? How many seats do you think you'll get in the European Union, in the European Parliament, as a result of this?
Well, I mean, I've been saying for 3.5 years that I wanted to cause an earthquake in British politics. We've certainly seen a few tremors today. I'm not going to count any chickens before they're hatched, but I would say the signs are encouraging. And my big focus isn't so much the number of seats we win, it's can we top the poll across the United Kingdom, and that's the marker that I'm looking towards.
And do you think you will?
I do, yes. I do. I've been sticking my neck out, but yes, I do. It may be tight, but I think we're going to get there, yeah.
So what is the future for UKIP now? We heard you down in Thurrock. Unless I misheard you, you were asked whether you'd stand yourself as an MP in Essex. You said, oh, they wouldn't want me here. I think that's what you said. Are you going to stand as an MP somewhere?
No, I'm from south of the river, the other side of the estuary. They wouldn't have me. And anyway, they wouldn't need me, because we've got some very good members of UKIP here in Essex. We did superbly well last year in the county council elections. We've done very well this year in the district council elections. And there are several seats here in Essex that are absolutely winnable for us in a general election next year. I haven't yet decided what I'm going to do, but I will choose a seat, but it will be south of the river.
So you will choose a parliamentary constituency to fight?
Yes, I will, absolutely. And what we're going to do over the course of the summer is we're going to look at these results, look at last year's results, and we will choose a number of target constituencies. We'll do exactly what Paddy Ashdown's Lib Dems did in the 1990s. We'll choose those seats, and one of the great measures will be, have we already got district and county councillors? Have we proved that under first past the post we can succeed in those constituencies? And we'll target, and once we've done that, we'll make sure that our financial resource and our human resource is targeted towards those seats.
And you have 11 months, or just over 11 months, to produce not just a simple story that you've been producing up to now about immigration and leaving the European Union, but a whole range of topics you've got to defend on the doorstep. And you yourself said, in as many words, that the last manifesto was rubbish and you didn't even bother to read it. How are you going to do this in the 11 months you've got? You've got one conference. How can you produce a serious platform for a political party which isn't just about UKIP pulling out of the EU or arguing for that?
Well, don't think that the immigration issue, which is now the #1 issue in British politics, absolutely neck and neck with the economy, don't think the immigration issue is going to go away. I think the plight of the Eurozone is such that immigration is likely to be an even bigger question by the time of the general election than it was last Thursday. But already we've laid out our principles on energy pricing, on wind energy and renewables, on grammar schools and the need for more social mobility, on taking people out of tax, particularly if they're only earning the minimum wage. So there are some very clear principles that have been set down. Yeah, sure, we scrapped the last manifesto, but in a sense the other parties have too. Nobody hand on heart can tell you what their manifesto is yet. So I accept there are some big challenges. We've got to reorganise, we've got to get the manifesto right, we've got to choose the right target seats and the right people, and we've got to professionalise yet more the centre of the party. They are big challenges. I'm under no illusions about that, but I think the party's got the energy and the enthusiasm to do it.
On the other hand, the three parties who've been damaged or potentially damaged by you are presumably also deciding how they will reply to UKIP's challenge, in effect. Would you feel that your job was done if the other three parties, or any one of them, changed their attitude on some of these issues, and you could be seen then simply as a party of protest that had your protest and then succeeded because the political attitudes of Westminster had changed?
Well, if the Conservative Party or Labour Party said, look, we realise we've been wrong about this, we realise that as a result of EU membership we are impotent, there is nothing we can do, to deal with immigration numbers. There's nothing we can do with employment regulation. There's nothing we can do because of environmental targets about the onshore and offshore building of very expensive wind farms. If they came clean with the British public and said, we absolutely accept that paying £55 million a day to be in an organisation that makes 75% of our laws makes no sense. If the Labour or Conservative Party said that, then to some extent you'd be right and our job would be done. But they appear to be determined. You know, the three parties, as I call them, legacy parties, they appear to be determined to maintain our membership of the European Union. And so actually, our view is diametrically opposed to them on most of the big issues of the day.
We've had voices from the Conservative Party last night and today saying that the right thing for the Conservatives to do now would be to love bomb you, so to speak, to embrace you, to bring you in with them and make some sort of agreement so you and they brought all the people who feel like you and they do, or like many of their supporters do, the people, Tories who've left to go to UKIP, bring them all back into one party and stand together at the general election. Is that still even a remote possibility and one you'd welcome?
Well, I don't think it is. I mean, the last interview that the Prime Minister gave when he was asked about UKIP, and remember, this guy's got form on UKIP. He's called us closet racists and loonies and fruitcakes and goodness knows what else. And the last interview the Prime Minister gave on UKIP, he called us appalling people. I think Mr Cameron views UKIP as being members of the lower orders. You know, we really are not worthy even to be in the room with him. So I think the idea of any deal happening whilst he's leader is unlikely. But I'm also not sure that it's desirable. I mean, remember, you know, look at the results of Rotherham and places like that. There's a big old Labour vote. There's a substantial Lib Dem vote and a very interesting non-vote, people who haven't voted for 20 years that are coming to UKIP. I would think about 1 in 3 of our voters across the country last night had come from the Conservatives, and most of those don't want to go back either. So it's actually quite difficult to see how this would make sense. And I would suggest that, you know, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Peter Bone and Douglas Carswell, they're looking at politics through the old ideas of left and right. And I think something bigger than that's going on.
Does David Cameron, Eric Pickles, look on Mr Farage as a member of the lower orders?
Well, I like
he
to
and
think,
his people?
I like to think I am the authentic voice of the lower orders, and I endorse what Mr Cameron says. There'll be no deals, no pact with UKIP. I congratulate Mr Farage for the success that he's had, but you know, with power comes responsibility, and we'll see him next year.
You'll see him off next year, or you'll see him next year?
I'll see him next year, and we'll see him off next year.
What do you say to what Nigel Farage is saying about your party and about you, indeed, or all three of you? You're the ones who've been bruised by this.
Yeah, well, I mean, Farage and UKIP have had some successes in traditional Labour areas. I completely concede that. I think they're right to some extent in that I think people... I don't think UKIP has got the answers, by the way, and I think when people see their real policies, a lot of working class people are going to run a mile, and that's not always come across. But I think...
Well, hang on a moment, you don't know what their real policies are.
To follow up on what he said, I think their success is being in speaking to that discontent that people have got, actually not just with politics, but normally that's driven by, you know, what's happening in their, you know, economic circumstances as well. I think Labour has got a lot of the answers. I think we need to probably do a bit more to connect in terms of showing that we understand that disconnect, and we do have the answers.
Standing patiently there, this is one interview that's not going to be stopped by Mr O'Flynn, because Mr O'Flynn isn't here to stop it. Nigel Farage, what do you say to that?
Well, Eric Pickles says that we'll be seen off next year. I would say to Mr Pickles, we'll see you in Westminster next year. This party is going to break through into the Westminster Parliament next year, and you never know, we might even hold the balance of power. And if we do that, there will be a referendum. And I believe, you know, I left business to come into politics. I believe we should be a self-governing democratic nation, and everyone that votes UKIP believes the same thing, and we're going to achieve it. And I'm sorry, but these three parties are hopelessly out of touch with the way the modern world is going.
Danny Alexander, do you want to have a word with Mr Farage?
Well, I congratulate Mr Farage on obviously some successful council results today. I think there is a debate to be had, but I think it's a debate that has to be had on the substance. So I think those of us who believe strongly in Britain's place in the European Union need to have that debate with people like Nigel Farage. Nick Clegg did that in the European elections. We'll talk about that, no doubt, on Sunday night, on the issue of Europe. Other parties, particularly the Labour Party, chose simply not to engage in that argument. And I think if we're really going to have this debate, those of us who believe passionately that Britain should be part of Europe for reasons of jobs and employment and making sure that we're a strong voice in the world, we need to speak up for our views. Otherwise, it's the likes of Nigel Farage and his side of the argument that gets all the airtime.
But doesn't Nigel Farage standing there represent all the failings of your three political parties? I mean, he's only there because the three of you are seen by the voter as having failed them in whatever way.
I'm sure Nigel Farage represents himself and not any of us. But I'd say that, I mean, we are seeing across the whole of the European Union, we're seeing protest movements of various sorts in more or less every major country in the European Union, with various sorts of opinions on things, but often coalescing around arguments about the European Union, arguments about immigration. I think that we have to get better at making our argument about how, in practice, we're actually helping to deal with those problems.
My question is, does he represent your failure?
Well, look, I'd go down to Eastleigh to answer that question. Nigel Farage mentioned Eastleigh earlier as a constituency that he is targeting. Actually, looking at the results in the local elections last night in Eastleigh, we saw an enormously strong performance from the Liberal Democrats, making further progress. The UKIP have been telling us for ages they're going to make a breakthrough in Eastleigh. I want to go down to Eastleigh and find out what they've got in the Lib Dem campaign there, because they've clearly found the best way to.
Well, you can ask him. He's there.
Deal with his.
You can ask him.
He's in Eastleigh. I think he's in Essex. He said.
No, but he'll know what's going on in Eastleigh. Go on. Nigel Farage.
You asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Danny Alexander says what's happening in
Eastleigh last night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Labour vote is down and staying down, that's for certain. The Lib Dems are very strong in Eastleigh. They held on very well, and we're still there, as we were in the by-election, just a couple of percentage points behind them. So at the moment, there's a bit of a stalemate in Eastleigh since the by-election, but we are still there, and we are the contenders next year. But I would just say this to Danny Alexander. If he wants to go on with his pro-EU position, but not trusting the British public by promising them a referendum, well, all I can say on behalf of UKIP is thank you. Thank you very much, because you will prove to be our best recruiting sergeant between now and the next general election. And it's because of that reason that I think whatever Labour say at the moment, by the time next May comes along, I suspect they will have changed their position.
Nigel Farage, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Where are you as a matter of interest? Because all we can see is a lamppost in the parkland.
Outside a pub in Basildon, where we won 11 seats here last night. So there's a bit of a celebration going on, and quite right.
So you're only outside the pub just to talk to us, and now it's back inside, is it?
Quite right, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Don't want to keep you away from your pint any longer.
Thank you.